Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We are joined today by Bradley Foster, who is the founder of Phoenix Academy, an experiential training program for psychedelic therapists. In addition to working as a psychotherapist and coach for 20 years, Bradley founded the Toronto Psychedelic Society in 2016, has personally overseen the treatment of hundreds of clients, and has trained 200 therapists. His goal is to share his knowledge and learning with others so we can develop our own style and best practices. He also encourages networks for the exchange of information for his trained therapists. He is a genuine OG in the Canadian psychedelic scene, and we are delighted to have him here with us today. So, Bradley, tell us a little bit about the Phoenix Academy training program. What's your mission and vision?
Well, my mission is to alleviate unnecessary suffering. And as a psychotherapist, I treated many clients, and when the opportunity to start training therapists came about, I joined forces with Mela Lumizano, and we created Chiron Academy in 2019, and um, and then trained you know, several dozen therapists.
Mhm.
And then we had a parting of the ways, and I moved to Vancouver and created Phoenix Academy.
Mm.
Um, and my uh, training involves an online course, um, which is about 100 hours, which teaches all the kind of essentials of um, sitting and all the things you need to know. It was kind of more exclusively an underground therapy program,
Right.
and then people would join a retreat, and we would take them through uh, a 5-MeO session. The people would sit for each other, and then they would have their own transformative experience, all done in a pretty intensive group
Mhm.
8-day retreat.
Wow.
So they would learn firsthand what it's like, to sit for others and to have their own psychedelic experience.
Right. What was the impetus behind creating this? Like, why did you decide to train people?
Well, I thought I could only really help about 50 people a year if I worked really hard and had lots of clients, which I did. But I thought, well, if I could find good therapists and
Mm.
train them, then they could go out and each uh, work with, up to 50 people. So the effect would be multiplied many times over. And, having trained about 200 therapists, there's a lot of people out there who are doing good work.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So
You
the
pretty much
multiplier effect.
not speak to anybody working in the Canadian psychedelic industry without them mentioning your name. So you definitely have an outsized impact in terms of the work that you've been doing. So thank you. Talk to me a little bit about the programs itself. Like you mentioned therapists. Is this specifically for people with clinical designations, or do you let other people in? Like, who are the ideal candidates?
The ideal candidates are people who are really passionate about this work. And, clinicians are wonderful in their own ways, but quite often we have to deprogram
Uh-huh.
psychotherapists because they're taught not to touch their clients. They're not so hands-on. Whereas, body workers are much more used to that sort of thing. Actually, I've found the ideal um, candidate is like a nurse,
Mm.
because they have a combination of, therapeutic background, the bedside manner.
Mm.
Um, but we pride ourselves in taking anyone who really wants to do this work, which has had mixed results, of course.
Right.
But quite often, psychologists and clinicians are a little too clinical and
Mhm.
a little too therapeutic. Um, so we have to ask them to kind of try and unlearn
Yeah.
what they know and come with a beginner's mind.
Yeah, right.
Because some psychedelic therapy training courses, they insist that you have, an MA or a PhD or something, and it's really a human skill.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
It's
That
uh it's interesting because I mean that's like what we've been trying to balance as well in determining what training programs to recommend. We get asked a lot and you're right. I mean, not everybody has a clinical designation, and in our experience, not everybody needs a clinical designation. And from where you're sitting, it may not even be helpful in some instances. So it's
it
nice
could
that
be a
you've got like
hindrance.
that
Yeah.
broad-based focus because ultimately you're right, with the proper training and grounding, you need to be called to do this work. But I still do think that like an essential groundwork of training is necessary and potentially hand-holding and coaching and ongoing, mentoring. So, like, is that the kind of stuff you offer in your program?
Yeah, we created Chiron Academy and Phoenix Academy, and all our graduates are in those groups,
Mhm.
and they help each other. So someone say, I've got this really difficult client. They're on this cocktail of medication. They have this complication or that complication, and sometimes the advice is, what, that's beyond your level of expertise. Don't treat that client. Or they're on lithium. They can't taper off that. They could end up with seizures. So they're not out there alone.
Yeah.
They have a group mind
Yeah,
to help
exactly.
them.
What are sort of the fundamentals you teach in the course?
Um, well, harm reduction is a big one, because if you're ignorant of the harms,
Yeah.
then that's where the problems start. Um, if you don't know anything about um, uh, the therapeutic underpinnings of your client, um, um, we kind of combine the spiritual, the clinical, the
Mm.
emotional, the somatic, which I think are really the four pillars of understanding um, psychedelic therapy.
Yeah.
Because you can't just master one. You have to have your hands in all three, all four.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It calls on a lot, right? It calls on a lot of personal resources in a way that traditional therapy doesn't always. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's important to have that skill set and desire. So do you have a cohort kicking off anytime soon or no?
My retreat program has been undermined, unfortunately, by
Mm.
some individuals who, have taken it upon themselves to, protect the public, because of whatever has motivated them. So many of my retreats have been canceled
Mm.
because of um, uh, I guess doubts that have been circulating about my competence and my ability to train people, even though the alumni have all benefited greatly, and they're still on board. So yeah, I'm changing gears and switching to more online training, because running retreats is just such a big risk with having to rent a retreat center and a caterer, and have the infrastructure to provide that training. I still have one retreat in October on Bowen Island, um, and I think I'm going to take a sabbatical next year.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
it's kind of sad that so much mistrust and rumor mongering um, can infect any community, including the psychedelic community. So that stories, get perpetrated and spread through the community that aren't true.
It's Hmm. I was speaking on a panel a couple weeks back for Entheo Nation around community accountability in the psychedelic industry, and this was one of the topics we tackled. In that there
Yeah,
isn't, any type of formal board or standard or accreditation that people can, like a licensing board that therapists might go to, where people can have a proper line of communication to raise their concerns, and they can be independently investigated, in a way that people's reputations are protected. And this is a concern.
it's a
Obviously,
huge
because
concern, and
anybody can
it's
say anything, and we don't have a framework for establishing legitimate and illegitimate players, and people are scared because sometimes these rumors are true. So it's
sometimes they are.
really
Yeah.
challenging. I'm sorry to hear that, you're facing that, but I am heartened to hear that you're pivoting into something so that you can continue to share, the depth of knowledge and wisdom that we believe you have. Talk to me a
And
little about those online programs. What are you going to be training in them?
well, just to go over that territory, yeah, I think that's why clinicians have always been favored because they're part of a college. There is accountability, but of course, anyone who's in a college cannot really come out and say, "Oh, I'm, doing psychedelic therapy." So quite often, someone in a college will be kicked out,
Yeah.
because they're doing something illegal.
Hmm.
Although I think that's probably shifting. Um, so what we've done in the Phoenix Academy is we've created Rising Resolve, which is an independent arm's length group of alumni who investigate any complaints made against
Wow.
Phoenix trained or Chiron trained therapists. And actually, this in a few days, we're going to be testing it out, and I'm going to be meeting with them. Because of rumors and scuttlebutt that's been going around, um, I've never been able to tell my side of the story.
Uh-huh.
So they're going to, bring anything that's been raised um, to resolve and to get back into right relationships.
Yes.
Because as somebody who is the subject of rumor, you're the last person to hear what's
Mhm.
being said,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So we have corrected that. So people who are in the alumni will be responsible to answer to Rise and Resolve.
It's critical. I'm glad, like, it's a digression here, but it's an interesting one, and I think it's one that both practicing guides and aspiring guides should be cognizant of. Your comment just earlier about people getting kicked out of colleges and that it may be abating. I mean, I was just speaking to someone a month ago in Ontario who was facing sanctions and potential expulsion for these reasons exactly. So I
Oh
don't
dear.
know that things are truly abating. There is still definite enforcement going on, and I think a lot of new people coming into the space who don't potentially have the legacy of the years that some of us may have seen where enforcement action was quite real, feel a little bit immune, and I'm not
Mhm.
convinced that's true. And to your point about being able to vet and validate performance, this is, anybody who's playing in this space should, and I shouldn't even say playing, right? Anybody who's right, exactly, putting in sacred time in this space should be prepared to maintain the kind of transparency that's necessary to validate the efficacy and legitimacy and safety of what they're doing. So I
Yeah, I
am
think that
kind of
the real
excited to hear
danger
that you're
is,
putting together a program that does allow for that, because right now the only vetting programs I know of are private, and it makes it hard to, yeah, review this kind of stuff.
yeah, if the therapist isn't on board with accountability, then you can't hold them to account. Um, there, a friend called up the BC equivalent of the Registered Psychotherapist of Ontario, the BC, I forget what it's called, but they asked if a psychotherapist using psychedelics was, going to be censured, and the person on the other end said, we know that some psychotherapists are using psychedelics, and that's just, that's okay, but if they do harm, then maybe we'll take action. So I'm sorry to hear that one of my colleagues was called out. But I think the real danger is the lone wolves, right? If we're in a collective, if we're all accountable to each other, then there's some hope of correcting someone who's doing harm,
Yeah.
or even unintentional harm. But if there's a lone wolf out there that's treating people and they're not accountable to anyone, that's the real danger, I think.
Yeah. Which is why one of the pillars in hopefully averting these kind of scenarios is proper training. It's not the only one, but it's definitely an essential one, as opposed to somebody having a transformative experience themselves and waking up the next day and deciding that they'd like to shepherd other people through transformative experiences, which I think is a great realization, but it's certainly not sufficient. So, like, I would like to veer back a little bit into the type of training that you are planning on offering online. What are those courses going to look like?
Well, I already have a couple courses up and running. There's, of course, psychedelic therapy level 1, which is a prerequisite to a training retreat. And I have Heal the Healer level 2, which goes more into things like pharmacology, physiology, understanding like how to take blood pressure properly,
Nice.
the modes of ingestion, how things work through the liver, or if they go through other means. So it's a much more in-depth look at how the body works on psychedelics. I have a starting your own business course. So for beginning practitioners, they can find out all the sort of do's and don'ts from people who've had experience setting up a business, and some of the pitfalls that they may find there. I'm working on a course on pharmacology and pharmacy, sort of alchemy slash pharmacy skills, so that you can learn how to make nasal sprays, how to work with a scale, because there are a lot of pitfalls there. People don't really understand, how to prepare medicines, how to create their own doses, how to grind crystal into powder, it's transforming things from one element to another. Down the road, I'm going to be creating an integration course. So I think integration is not very well understood or taught. And then there's one other course that'll come to me in a moment, but just yeah.
When it comes back
Yeah,
in there.
yeah. I'm working on quite a bit right now.
Yeah, no, it sounds really exciting. So,
Mhm.
when people go through either your retreats or these online programs, like, can they expect additional resources, right? You were mentioning that they have sort of a community of practice built in because they've got a peer network. Are there any other, like, do you provide them with forms or questionnaires or anything like that?
Yeah, if you take the psychedelic therapy 101 course, it provides you with sample questionnaires, sample intake forms, sample documents you send to your clients, because I'm a strong believer in informed consent. So when somebody contracts with you to do a psychedelic therapy, you need to be very upfront about how much you're charging, what they get for it. And all of that needs to be put in writing. And I have many other documents, recipe books, things like that. even a kind of primer on pharmacy skills, how to make caps and things like that. Um, and I've created a site called woundedhealer.net, which is free to join. So all of your listeners are welcome to join woundedhealer.net. And on there we have many, many, many resources, videos, audiobooks, um, uh, studies. It's I've over the years I've collected thousands of documents which are all available, and of course there's chat groups and forums on particular subjects like plant medicine or um, you know sitting or harm reduction.
That's amazing. I will definitely post more information about that on our community and share it with our listeners. That's yeah, valuable stuff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh,
And a friend of mine is Doc Z, who was the inventor of 3-MMC and OPCE, 4-MMC, and a feature film has been made about his early life in Israel when he developed the original cathinone, which 3-MMC is the kind of derived from that. And we're going to be having a premiere of that film soon, as soon as
oh
we
yeah,
can
definitely
make
share
arrangements.
information with me and we can make that available as well because I'm sure a lot of people will be interested. There's been some amazing filmmaking in this space in the last few years. So that sounds like that sounds really interesting. Thank you for
Oh
sharing.
yeah, it's really like surreal and psychedelic, and it's a wonderful film. It's
It,
great.
you know what? But all of this is kind of surreal. It does kind of lead me to a question I wanted to ask you, which is like, how have things changed in the psychedelic space since you started working here?
Well, I guess when the psychedelic renaissance kind of got started in around 2016, I was going to conferences, meeting lots of people. The world just seemed full of possibility, and it looked like, MDMA get legalized. But then, started getting commercialized, and everybody and their uncle was starting a psychedelic company, and people were investing, and then suddenly those things blew up, and lots of people lost money, and I think a lot of people, well, I guess got weeded out. The ones who were hoping for some kind of quick profit, which is a good thing, but I think that led to a lot of disappointment, and people kind of going back underground. And then, of course, the FDA didn't or still hasn't legalized MDMA or psilocybin. But in the meantime, it's been possible to get more and more substances available online. I mean, since about 2016, it was always possible to order mushrooms on a website in Canada. Um, and Unfortunately, that didn't really come with very much information or harm reduction about how to test things. But in the meantime, some of that information gap has been filled in, and there are good sites where you can go, and like there's one called like how to use psychedelics.com or something like that. And
Mhm.
you can actually take sort of mini courses on how to microdose and how to take mushrooms or MDMA with with um, harm reduction in mind, and so it's just everybody doing like little bits here and there. But there's also been people who think that they know uh, more than anyone else, and they go out there without training, and can possibly run into trouble.
Yeah.
So it's a chaotic schmozzle, but
That is
it's heartening to see.
perfectly stated.
It's heartening to see younger clinicians like psychiatrists and doctors and psychotherapists coming in, and some of the older ones who have been using psychedelics for many years, kind of coming out of the woodwork and um, uh, bringing their knowledge and skills into, the clinical space and the underground.
Yeah.
And in 2016, people were saying, well, if you're in the underground, stay in the underground. If you're above ground, stay above ground. And now I see people floating back and forth, doing some underground work, doing some above ground work. So yeah, it's a bit of a chaos, but
Interesting times, that is for damn sure. Yeah.
that's for damn sure. Yeah.
Given this state of affairs, and I think most everyone who's right been in the I hesitate to say industry space ecosystem for long enough has sort of agrees. What advice would you have for people who are thinking of working in this space, so becoming guides or facilitators or psychedelic therapists?
Well, I think having, at least one modality to start with, if you learn IFS or take courses in somatics or, um, and definitely have your own experiences. Back in 2016, there used to be debates like, oh, does a clinician have to have had their own experiences to guide someone? And I said, of course, a lot of people were saying, of course, but there were still people who were thinking like, it's okay to be a mechanic and not know how to
Not
drive a
drive a
car,
car.
Um, and that seems to have died down. But I think, definitely having your own experiences, because something that I really emphasize as a new Shulganist is to have your own experiences. If you're going to be a guide, you need to know how to navigate your own psyche. And when things come up in a psychedelic experience, you need to know um, kind of roughly where that person is and how to reach them.
Yeah, right. You can't guide people out if you haven't been in. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're psychopomps, right? It's like um, I think they were Greek, um, uh, I don't know, demigods who led people into the underworld,
yeah,
and guided them into, either Hades or wherever. And it's like, yeah, it's okay, we got you, and but they have to be guided back.
yeah,
you know
right.
Sometimes people don't, they're not ready for a psychedelic experience, and that's when they get into trouble.
Yeah, entirely true. Um, have we missed anything? Is there anything else you want to share that we haven't really touched on?
Hmm. I don't know. I think the main thing is just to keep a beginner's mind. I think when people think they know all there is to know, then that's when,
Mm.
you know, bad things will happen,
That's yes.
because we just have to keep learning. We have to keep having our own psychedelic experiences. I always tell my client or my students, um, don't give anyone anything you haven't taken yourself. And one of my, oh yeah, that's the other course. It's on stacking.
There you
Because
go.
one of the things I pioneer is using stacks. So instead of just, being a mushroom facilitator or just giving people MDMA, I say, sometimes, you can curate an experience by giving somebody, a dose of MDMA, dose of mushrooms, and then a booster. Because if they're coming for a psychedelic experience, like why just have a 4 hour experience when you can have, a 6 or 8 hour experience and really get in deep.
Mhm.
Um, my training is about self growth and healing, and it's not to be taken lightly. It's a transformative, a deeply transformative experience. And if you just skim the surface, or if you send somebody into overwhelm by giving them 7 grams of mushrooms, that doesn't help. That just overwhelms them, and then they're lucky if they come out of it in one piece. But you can make things much more gentle by combining substances and curating the experience, so you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it has to be done skillfully,
For sure.
because it's not about giving people more medicine. I always cut the doses down to the most effective dose, so that they might get 75 milligrams of MDMA to start, and then go into a much deeper space with something like 4-ACO,
Right.
but like 30 milligrams, and then another 75, which we call the soft landing of
Mhm.
MDMA,
Right.
which allows them, and it's really interesting. They might spend 2-3 hours, in a psychedelic haze sometimes, and then you give them the booster dose 2 hours in, and just 75 milligrams of MDMA, and they're doing all their work after that.
Yeah. Ah,
Um,
wow. That's super interesting. I'll probably want to explore some of that with you at a separate time, but I want to thank you so much for your time today and for your honesty and for sharing where you're at and for continuing to do the work in a difficult space and a difficult time. Um,
mhm. Thank you.
we'll be sharing links to your website. If there's any other place that people can find you, let me know.
Yeah, my website is phoenixacademy.ca, and Wounded Healer is woundedhealer.net. And yeah, I don't really have much of a social media profile. I just don't really have the time for that. But we do have Phoenix Academy on Instagram and Facebook, and you can contact us there. We send out messages from time to time, like when King Cat premieres, we'll certainly send a message out to our audience.
Nice. Thank you so much again for your time, Bradley.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be here, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you.